To inform you about an unspeakable, unimaginable domestic violence tragedy here in the town of Westford. With me is Police Chief Tom McInerney, the police chief in this town, Detective Lieutenant Thomas Sullivan of the State Police, assigned to the Middlesex DA's office. Also with me is the superintendent in schools here in Westford, Bill Olson, and the principal at Westford Academy, Jim Antonelli. Last night at approximately 8:30, after a 911 call, police officers assigned to the Westford Police Department went to 7 Makepeace Road here in Westford. What they found there was not only tragic, it is unimaginable. Found at 7 Makepeace Road were 3 bodies, 1 critically injured and 2 dead. Brian Marchand, a 59-year-old man, was found dead with a self-inflicted gunshot wound. In the same room was his daughter, 17-year-old Olivia Marchand, who's a senior here at Westford Academy. Critically injured was Jody Marchand, Brian Marchand's wife. What we found at that scene and what we now believe is that Brian Marchand killed himself after killing his daughter, Olivia, and critically wounding his wife, Jody. Jody is now at UMass Medical in Worcester. She is suffering from critical injuries. We can only be hopeful that she survives this tragic incident. We've spent all morning at Westford Academy with Superintendent Olson, Principal Antonelli, myself, and Chief McInerney, talking to faculty, helping them through this grief. A conversation has been had with the larger Westford Academy community. We will be communicating with the larger community outside of the school. We are trying to help them begin the healing process and the grieving process as it continues. What we have been able to piece together at this time is that there were no known incidents of domestic violence at that home or between Mr. Marchand and his wife. Chief McInerney and I have done a locate and realized that there were no responses by the Westford Police Department to that address where the 3 bodies were found. Nothing speaking to domestic violence. To the extent that any motive can be attributed to this, all we can now determine is that there may have been marital discord and there may have been some financial issues, but nothing to the degree that anyone could think or lead one to believe that something like this could occur. I want to commend the Westford Police Department for doing everything they could based upon what they knew to get to that scene. This was not avoidable. I want to commend the Westford Academy leadership, Superintendent Olson, Principal Antonelli, for doing everything they can within that school and within this community, again, to help the students who knew Olivia, who's a beautiful, extremely well-liked cheerleader at Westford Academy, was heading to UVM next fall, and very much looking forward to that. That won't happen now. Jody Marchand, a loving wife and mother. Her dad spent time with both Chief McInerney and I this morning. He's grieving for his granddaughter and obviously extremely hopeful that his daughter pulls through. Again, she's in critical condition. The one thing I would ask you is if you could please respect the privacy and the grieving period of those at Westford Academy. I appreciate and understand that you may want to be there at some point, but please just respect the wishes of the superintendent, the principal, and the police chief on behalf of all of those within the Westford Academy community and the larger community. Do you have any questions at this time? Vicki?
I guess in terms of a weapon, what kind of a weapon was found? Where were they found? Was there a sign of a struggle? Was this just something that took them by surprise?
All 3 of the people who were either injured or killed at the scene. Mr. Marchand, Jody, Marchand, and Olivia were all in the home's master bedroom. We believe the weapon that was used to kill Olivia and to critically wound Jody was a 9mm handgun. We know that Mr. Marchand was licensed to possess several guns. He was an avid hunter and fisherman. He also possessed other guns that he was not licensed and registered for. We can't know exactly what happened within the home. We have, myself and Chief McEnany, listened to the 911 tape. It's compelling, in some ways is revealing, and in some ways leaves us to question and speculate exactly what happened in the home. But it does appear that there would have been some type of conversation around the marital discord which led Mr. Marchand to do what he did. But as I've said before, everything that we have been able to piece together in this matter makes it unbelievable that there could be any motive to kill your young and beautiful daughter and your wife.
Who
So
called
when did you
you?
get a 911 call? What came out of that call?
The 911 call was received at approximately 8:30 p.m. There were two hang-ups, actually, and I commend the Westford Police Department and the dispatcher, because as a result of those two hang-up calls, they did a call back, which is protocol within the Westford Police Department. They did a call back to the home, and the initial response they received was from Olivia herself. And the initial response led them to continue to dispatch and go to the home, but did not lead them to believe that it was going to be the tragic incident that resulted. As soon as the first hang-up call came in, Westford PD dispatched to that scene. After the two hang-up calls, after the call back from the dispatcher, and during the conversation with Olivia, is the time when Olivia and her mother were injured and killed. And that was at that time when Mr. Marchand turned the gun on himself and killed himself. During the callback conversation as a result of the hang-ups, while the police officers were going to the scene.
So things were actually, things were percolating, bubbling, and they knew there was trouble, and they called 911, and by the time you guys got there, they had been shot?
During the course of the conversation between the dispatcher and Olivia, shots were fired, Olivia was killed, Marchand critically wounded his wife and killed himself.
How far apart
This
were
is
the
the
911 calls?
second fatal shooting we've had in less than a month. What's happening? Can you attribute this? Is this a domestic violence spike, a trend, or just random, or what do you think?
You're right in highlighting the fact that there have been two domestic violence incidents which have resulted in death here in Westford in the last couple of weeks. We do not see that as a trend. We don't, in fact, see a connection between the two. We could speculate as to larger issues concerning trending or the community here, but there's nothing that leads us to believe that either one of these incidents had anything to do with each other, or there's an identifiable or definitive trend at this point.
Is there any indication that this was planned by Mr. Marchand?
We have no reason to believe at this time that his critical wounding of his wife and the killing of his daughter was planned or intended for any period of time, other than what we can only speculate at this time would have occurred between Mr. and Mrs. Marchand in the home that night. When the officers arrived, all of the gunshots had taken place.
Would the superintendent or principal be able to talk about how this is impacting the school community?
Certainly. The superintendent also would address you, and if you'd like to do that now, or I can take a few more questions, and the superintendent also is available.
There's a discrepancy. The address comes up as Tingsboro address 653, and I know the area. I know that Dunstable, Chelmsford, and Westford all converge at that spot.
Right, Dennis.
Why does that come up?
Yeah, here's what happens. When the call comes in, the police department gets the number and the address that the number comes back to. The address that the number comes back to is 7 Makepeace Road in Westford, which is where this happened. During the course of the conversation with Olivia, when the dispatcher asked her for the address, she gave what is essentially a mailing address. However, that didn't take the police officers off their route, because what they're focused on is electronically the phone number, the address the phone number comes up to in Westford, and that's where they were dispatched to, and that's where they went. So the only comment about another address was in fact made by Olivia, but that was not something which caused the police department to do anything other than go to 7 Makepeace Road, which is protocol based upon their GPS system, which is tied into the 911 call, and it's all electronic.
All right, so the Tingsboro address and the Westford address are essentially the same building, same one.
It's
dwelling.
not sure the same. I'm not sure it's the same building, but it's the Tingsboro address is a mailing address that the family would use. The actual address is 7 Makepeace Road in Westford, which is not very well marked and is in an area where it takes a little maneuvering to get to.
Did that cause any delay though, Jerry?
I don't know that. I don't know much about the other children.
Did that cause any delay? It didn't cause any delay though?
No,
The
no,
officers were still going
absolutely.
there, they knew where they were going.
Right, which is actually, one thing, we learn a lot of things when we deal with tragic incidents like this, and one of the good things that we learn from a police and law enforcement perspective is these systems, which work electronically and tie an address directly to the phone number, come up electronically. They come up actually in the cruiser, and the officers were not detoured in any way from going to where they intended to go.
What did
Are
the
you releasing
Marshalls
these
do for a living?
conversations,
Were
or are
they
you
employed?
holding them for evidence?
Brian Marchand was part of an oil burning business for several years. It was a family business in and around the Chelmsford area. In the last few to several years, Marchand had basically been self-employed around the oil burning business.
And her and Jody?
Mrs. Marchand has had different jobs. She worked at a bank in the financial sector for some time and recently took a different job. Olivia, as I mentioned, is a very well-liked, very popular cheerleader at Westford Academy, very well-known young kid.
Would you be releasing any of the tape?
No, no, we won't be releasing any
Did
of the
police-
911 tape at this time.
Did police hear gunshots when they arrived, or did the gunshots take place out of hearing range?
The gunshots that I'm referring to, that Chief Mackin and I have listened to, were during the course of the 911 tape, listening to the 911 tape.
So the shots are heard on the 911 tape?
As far as Chief McInerney and I are concerned, we heard the 911 tape. We heard the shots on the 911 tape. I don't want to talk about the responding officers and what they heard or saw at this time.
Jerry, are you releasing that tape, Jerry? Are you holding it as evidence?
No,
What are you doing
we
with the
won't
tape?
be releasing the 911 tape at this time. There's still some things that we're working on by way of investigation. Obviously, it's not in the context of criminal charging, where everything that we know and believe at this time is that Brian Marchand killed killed his daughter, killed himself, and is critically wounded as well.
What do you
Jerry,
know
was
about
you-
their financial situation? Were they facing a foreclosure? Was there a job loss? Was his business in trouble?
Yeah, I really wouldn't speak to the specifics concerning the financial situation. These are all things that we're still trying to piece together. But when we get together like this and talk about these type of incidents, and you try to search for some motive which might make it in some way understandable, we've had some indications that there may have been marital discord, there may have been financial issues, but as I said before, nothing that we have learned at this point would allow any of this to be understandable in no way from a motive
Have they
perspective.
tried
Could
for
you
a
even
divorce?
foreshadow something like this occurring?
Last question.
Jerry, was he holding his wife and daughter hostage because he had this weapon, or was this premeditated? Was there a suicide note, or was he set off by this 911 call that he said it's all over? In other words, he had a weapon in that room. Was he holding it against their will at that moment? They were able to try to make this call for help, or how do you understand what was happening in there at that between 8:25 and 8:37?
It's a little premature to indicate definitively what we believe happened there, but based on your question, Steve, our understanding would be it would be more of the latter than the former. This was not a hostage type situation, a premeditated, intentional act. It was something that, from what we can tell, was spurred by what occurred in the house on that evening.
Are you saying that the phone call might have spurred?
No, and as I said, I'm talking very generally about what we believe may have occurred. We're still putting together all of the pieces, but based upon what we know, I think we're fairly confident in determining at this point, at least, that this was not a intentional hostage type situation. It was something which is born of whatever discord might have existed before last evening and whatever last night might have spurred these unspeakable acts.
First, sincerely thank the Westford Police Department in the District Attorney's Office for the outstanding communication and cooperation they provided to us. I also want to commend Principal Jimmy Antonelli and the entire high school staff for implementing very rapidly a crisis management plan. On behalf of everyone in the family of the Westford Public Schools, I want to express our profound sadness over the loss of just an outstanding student who was a shining star and brightened the hallways and the classrooms of Westford Academy every day she was in attendance. Last night, Principal Antonelli and I met and talked with Chief McEnany. As you know, most school systems, including ours, have a crisis management protocol that we implemented immediately. Principal Antonelli made all of his contacts during the night, and I know did not get very much sleep at all like the rest of us. We met early this morning with the crisis management team at the high school, and then subsequently met with the staff. As you can understand, there was an incredible amount of emotion. We have a very close-knit, caring school system, and we have a very close-knit, caring community. And teachers were profoundly impacted, and so were the students. Our job right now is to make sure that everyone can make it through the next several days with kindness, caring, compassion, and support that we can offer them, and we will do that. We have lost a very, very wonderful member of our school system who will never be forgotten, and this will have a long-lasting impact on us for a long time to come. You know, we practice crisis management protocols often in all of our schools, but when something like this happens, the human emotion enters into it, and it makes it an entirely different process. And we saw that this morning. So I want to thank you for your respect in dealing with communication, respecting the privacy of our students and our staff, because they're having a tough time. And I will be sending out a communique to the parents throughout the community just to inform them of the tragedy and what we are doing. I know Principal Antonelli this morning sent a similar communique out to the parents of the Westford Academy community, and I want to thank you very much.
Is there a memorial service of any kind? What are you doing with the students? Is there a memorial of some kind, or a place for them to go to grieve?
Well, we have several locations. Principal Antonelli and the staff have set up several locations in the high school for counselors to be available. I know there are easels at the school that we've seen students writing notes on. Some students have discussed with us, and we are certainly supportive of it, of constructing a small memorial within the school system. As you know, those of you who have high school age students, they're very close to one another. And when something like this happens, they come together with great support and great compassion and great understanding, and we want to allow them to go through this whole process so that they can work through this very, very unthinkable tragedy. And we also want to work with our staff, because many of our staff are extremely upset, and understandably so.
Last evening, when we activated the crisis response team, in accordance with our school protocols, I had the director of guidance make sure that the safe room was set up. Safe room was set up within the guidance suite where all of our counselors are, and at this time there has been an overflow of students. So we provided a couple different venues for our students to go through the grieving process. A question was asked about the memorial. Students are working on writing some notes to Olivia in regards to the situation that's occurred, and going through the grieving process, and we do plan to set up a memorial in the cafeteria for students to put down additional notes. But there is places for students to go, safe places for students to go. Counselors are available. We've also been called by several other districts to provide some resources to us as a school community.
How do they show their emotion? I tend to, when I've dealt with other young people dealing with death, they're not sure if they're sad or they're angry? How is it?
All of those emotions are coming to the forefront. Students sit in a quiet place in the guidance area and maybe approached by an adult, but just really want quiet time. Others are hugging in the hallways, others are hugging in different rooms, others are meeting in small conference rooms as groups or kids that may have been connected with Olivia in different venues throughout the building. So there really is an opportunity for them to go through the grieving process together the way they see fit for themselves.
What about your
activities
thoughts?
was she involved in, Jim?
She was a volleyball player for 3 years and was also involved with the varsity cheerleading program.
Jim, can you give some personal thoughts? Did you know her well?
You know, with 1,600 students, it's hard to know every single student, but you know, you try to get some face time with each student along the way. My daughter happened to be a cheerleader, so I got to witness Olivia in different events and so forth. Very special child, very bright, and a very bright future ahead of her that has been tragically taken away.